What is going on YouTube? We are back for another video. We are still doing the Bankroll challenge. Every couple of videos I'll come back and I'll show you what the update is. I'm not going to title every single one Bankroll challenge, but just want to say thank you everybody for watching. This is going to be a double session today at MGM from two different sessions. So in the middle, I will give an update about where I'm at after the first session, and then we'll get right to the second session. So just want to say, if you're new to the channel, like, comment, and subscribe. There's a ton of hands that I need your commentary on. I'm active in the comments, so let's have a discussion. And like I said, if you're new, make sure you subscribe. I'm back putting up videos. I'm going to try to put up videos every single week. So let's get right to the hands. And without further ado, let's get it. So here we are. We are in the first hand, and we are looking down at Jack 10 suited under the gun. So pre-flop action starts with a raise from me to 15. Next ad calls and the small blind calls as well. So we are off to a flop, which is Queen Jack 9. So we have top pair and also an open-ended straight draw. So on this board, I like it a lot. I'm going to c-bet here, but I do not get the chance because the small blind decides to donk for $25. So of course, a lot of times when somebody does this is going to be a top pair kind of hand. So I don't really know if I want to raise. He could have a lot of two pair because most of his top pairs are going to contain either Queen Jack, Queen 9, King Queen. Hands that I don't really know will fold. So I just decided to call, and right behind me, the next act player decides to raise it up to $65. Now, when this happens, of course, the small blind decides to call. So when it gets to me, obviously I don't want to go all in. That's a bad decision. But seeing as that one player called and all of my straight draws are clean, I decided to go ahead and put in the $40 more, see if I can hit my straight or improve in any way. And we are off to a turn, which is a 4, so a complete brick. And now once again, the small blind donks for $25. So I don't really know what's going on. It's clear that somebody has a very strong hand, because why would you lead the flop, call the raise, and donk the turn? That's just asinine. So I fold for the 25, even though I'm getting a crazier price according to the pot, and the +1 player behind me decides to go all in, and the small blind snap calls. They both flopped a straight with 10-8, and funny enough, the river was a jack, so I would have river trips if I somehow got to the river, which would have sucked, obviously. It probably still could have got away from it, maybe. But anyways, that's the first hand. I lose a pretty good chunk of money here, but it's all right. We're going to battle, see if we can get some more chips in the next hand. So this was one of the hands I was hoping I could get some comments on. So we have pocket sevens. There's a straddle. When it gets to me, I raise it up to $20. And the button calls, and so does the small blind. So we are off to the flop 3 ways, which comes 4, 9, jack. So not really that great of a flop. Somebody could have a jack or a 9. But nonetheless, with their 60 in the pot, I decided to bet out for $35. The button quickly folds and the small blind calls. So now when the turn is a king, I definitely can rep a king here. And if he only had like top pair, he's probably not going to like that hand. Most people put the razor on ace king. So I decided to put out a pretty big bet of 70. Now, in proportion to the pot, it's about the same. However, the amount of money is going to put a lot of pressure on this person to let him know that I might go all in on the river. So when I bet the 70, he snap calls, and when he snap calls with no flush draw on the board, it's really telling me that he likes his hand, or he just doesn't believe me at all. So now the river is a 6, and he checks, and I'm actually contemplating if I should shove all in, but I just decide to check it back and give it up. And he shows that he has a set of 4s, so obviously I wasn't getting that to fold. I don't like how I played my hand, but at the same time, I think I'm supposed to bet when the king comes. Let me know in the comments what you think. It was a tough one. I mean, I lost a lot of chips here, so we're 0 for 2 right now in these hands. So hopefully this third one goes a little bit better than that. I'm going to go over just one quick hand from the app just because it's cool. So we are sitting here with Queen 10 in the big blind. We call a $12 raise. The player doesn't have that much money, so probably could fold here sometimes, but obviously who's going to fold such a pretty hand? So we are going to a flop, which is 10-3 jack with 1 heart. So we have second pair, also got backdoor straight and flush draws. Also, we now have 60% of a royal flush. So anyways, we check to the aggressor and they bet out for $17. Obviously, on this board, we're going to put in a call, see what happens on the turn. And the turn is an ace of heart. giving us a gut shot straight draw, and also now we have 80% of a royal flush. So obviously at this point, we're just never going anywhere ever. So we check it over to the aggressor and they bet out for $19. With all that being said, we're gonna put in the call and we see the king of heart on the river giving us the royal flush. Now there is four to a straight. Any queen does make a straight. So obviously if my opponent has two pair, they're likely to check back with their straight. So at this point, they only have 49 left. So I'm just gonna rip it all in. I'm lead jamming with a royal flush. See if we can get called. We go all in and they call with pocket queens. They did hit the straight. So obviously it wasn't a super large pot, but definitely fun to hit a royal flush. Just wanted to share. If you want to join in on the app, you already know my number is in the description of all the videos, also on my page. I also run games on ClubGG, so if you want to get into that, also just let me know. All my information is in the description. But let's get back to the felt, back to MGM, part two. Let's get this money back and run it up. Now we're moving on to a premium hand. This one is a true premium. We got pocket queens in the cutoff. There's a straddle and a limp, so I decided to raise it up to $25. Only the person in the straddle decides to call, and we are off to a flop, which is it's just about as beautiful as it can get. Queen 7-7, so we flop a full house. When he checks, I decide there's no point in betting here, so I'm just going to check. And on the turn, we see an 8, and he then jams for $50. I take a second to call just because I want to make sure that that's all in, and once I confirm that it is, I call and tell him that I have a full house, and we are off to a river, which is a brick. It doesn't matter. He's drawing dead. He had ace 8, so our flop check got him to catch up on the turn. He jammed all in, and we won a decent pot. So still not even quite yet, but we're on the right track, and we're going to move on to the next hand and see if we can keep this trend going. Now we are sitting here with 10A suited. I decided to raise to $20 from the low jack. Only the straddle player decides to call. We are off to a flop, which is Jack 6-3 Rainbow. And when he checks, I decide to bet out for $20, about half pot. And he decides to call. So now we're off to a turn, which is a 9. And now we're open ended. And I think this is where I'm supposed to be putting max pressure on this opponent, especially because he seems to be semi competent. So I think a turn bet will let him know that I'm strong. And unfortunately, I decided to check, and the river's a brick. We don't hit our open ended straight. And then he goes all in, and I just do this little fake tanking, trying to make it seem like I'm making a decision. But only thing I'm really thinking was, damn, should I have bet that turn? Because I know he's competent to know that when I bet flop as a normal C bet, check back the turn on the river, I'm not going to have anything. So he can just bluff liberally, knowing that I'm taking such a passive line. That's what I'm saying. I can tell that he's a thinking player. And I think against a thinking player, I'm supposed to put in a bet on the turn, let him know that I might have those strong top pairs or over pairs in my range, which I do. But that being said, he takes it down and we lose. But we're going to get into another hand with him in the very next one. So let's see if we can get the better of him this go round. So this is the biggest pot of the session. So we have Jack 7 of hearts in the small blind, and when there is a hijack raised to $20, I think I should just fold here, but it's the same player who just beat me in the last hand, so I'm trying to get back. So I decided to call the 20, and so does the under the gun limper. So we're off 3 ways to a flop, which is 6-4 deuce with 2 hearts. So of course I'm going to check to the razor, and he bets out for $25. Now at this point I could be putting in a raise, as I do have an overcard, backdoor straight draw, and along with the flush draw. But however, I just decide to call. I think that's a mistake because our opponent is not guaranteed to have overpairs. So I think here I could be putting in a raise, especially to a competent player who's just going to see bet all of his range on this type of board. So I think that's probably the best play. However, I decided to just call, and so does the undergun limper. So we're still 3 ways, and now we see a turn, which is a jack. Now giving us top pair, not a good kicker, but with a flush draw. And so now when I check, it gets around to the razor, and he bets out for 75 now. So this is a significantly bigger bet, but once again, if this player is competent, he's just going to keep on betting all cards that favor his range. So he's going to continue to rep like he has aces, kings, queens, ace, jack, king, jack, all of these hands of the sorts that have me beat. Any Broadway cards, it's going to favor him in this configuration. And I think this is a spot where I should just be shoving all in or folding if I really believe him, because I only have 100 left. So this $75 when I call, I don't have much behind. But unfortunately, I make the mistake and I just call, and we're now heads up to the river, which is a king. I check and he doesn't take much time at all and he just rips it all in. Obviously, this king is going to be really good for him. If he had like king queen, ace king, I'm sorry, something like that, then he now made his hand. Of course, if he was bluffing with a hand like, let's say, ace queen, queen 10 possibly, I would still be ahead. But seeing as that he ripped it all in, I don't know. I think sometimes I got a call, but I think really I should have made my move on the turn or whatever I was going to do. So unfortunately, I decided to fold. I never get a reveal, so I don't know if it was the right decision. But let me know in the comment. Do you think I should have played differently with a raise on the flop or a jam on the turn? Let me know, but we got to move on. All right, so after that first session wasn't so good. We lost $225. It was a couple bad situations where I put a lot of money in the pot, didn't yield any money. That Jack 7 chase hand, I don't like it. I lost a lot of money there. I think I should have just jammed, especially on the turn. But it is what it is. Y'all let me know what y'all think. We're going to jump right back into the second part of the session. So in this session, the first hand that we see is going to be pocket nines. So we're on the button. I decided to raise it up to $15. The small blind and the cutoff decide to call. So we are going three ways to a flop, which is 7-7-8 with two clubs. When it checks to me, I decide to bet out for $20 into the pot that has about 45. Only the small blind player decides to call, and now the turn is another 7. So we now have a full house. Obviously, there's a lot of flush draws now that are going to not love this, because if they hit their card, they're still dead to any full houses. However, I still got to put out a bet. I don't want to see any overcards hit. So I decided to put out a bet of $35, and the small blind decides to fold. So we win this first hand of this session, which is a lot better than the other one. So we're going to keep this momentum going into the next hand, and let's see if we can get another big pot. So this is an interesting hand because we are on the button with 4-3 of clubs. Nice, pretty suited connector, my favorite suit. On the button, I decide that I'm just going to raise to 20 over a straddle. So the small blind and the straddle decide to call. So now we are going three ways to a flop once again, and it is ace king 4. So we have bottom pair, but this is really going to smash our range. Obviously, ace high boards are still going to consist of the small blind calling and the shadow calling ranges, but nonetheless, we're going to have the strongest ones in range. So I bet out for $30 and the small blind calls alone. So we are off to the turn, which is a 3. So we now have two pair, and when I'm looking at the guy's stack, he looks to have about 100 left. I rip it all in, thinking if he has an ace, this card is not going to scare him at all. And so he takes about a few seconds, but then unfortunately he does decide to fold after considering. And obviously we wanted a call, but reason why I didn't want to slow play my bet was because my hand is vulnerable. If he does have an ace and a king comes, I do get counterfeit. So I decided to get the money all in right now. As long as I don't get snap called, I know I'm getting in the money good. So that was the decision, but he thinks it over and he folds. So still, once again, we are 2 for 2 on these hands, and I'm loving it. So here we are to another fun hand. We have ace queen in the low jack. We raise it up to $15. And there's a cutoff call, small blind, and big blind call. I guess nobody respects my raises because I'm raising pretty frequently. But it is what it is. I'd rather be the aggressor. But anyways, so we're going four ways to a flop, which is ace 7-3. So we flop top pair and second best kicker, but I don't think we're going to see ace king very much. So we decided to bet out $25 into the pot of 60, and only the cutoff calls, everyone else gets out of the way. The turn is a king. Obviously, ace king is not really a factor, and ace king was already beaten us, so this card changes nothing. Besides, it does bring in a diamond flush draw, but I'm looking at his stack. I don't really care about if a flush draw hits. I'm still going to go all in. So looking at his stack, I just want to bet an amount where he'll almost have to call the river. So I bet out for $40, and he doesn't think about it long at all, and he decides to put in the call. So if the person had a bigger stack, seeing that there's so much money in the pot, I probably would bet closer to like $60, $65. But I just kind of wanted to draw him in. He only has 50 remaining after this 40 gets put in. But anyways, we get to the river, which is a queen. So we now have two pair. Obviously, we didn't need it. And when we go all in for his last 50, I think he's almost mandatory has to call if he has any pair or if he has any ace especially, but he doesn't think about it for too long, and once again he folds. But nonetheless, still a decent sized pot, seeing is that I had 3 people call my pre-flop raise, 1 person called my flop and turn bet. Pretty good situation there, and now we are going to the final hand and probably the most divisive hand of the whole video. So we now have ace 10 of diamonds. I know I'm going to get flamed in the comments probably, but I want to know your thoughts. So we have ace 10 and we raise it up to 15 from the cutoff. And the button, the big blind, and the under the gun limper all decide to call. So we are now going to go 4 ways to a flop, which comes jack 6 deuce with 1 diamond. So all we have is an overcard and some back doors. So being as that I'm in between all of my opponents, I decide to just check, and the button quickly checks back. So we are now going to a turn which is a 3 of diamonds, bringing us a flush draw, also bringing in 4-5 for a straight. However, we'll see what happens. And now the big blind player, who I haven't seen him get too active, decides to put out a bet of 36. So that's a pretty good bet sizing. And so on this, when it folds to me, I just decided to call. Could raise here sometimes, but seeing as that he's been tighter from what I've seen, I just decided to call. So now we are off to a river heads up, which is a 2 of diamonds, giving us the nut flush. However, I do notice that it pairs the board. So now when he checks, this is just like the green light to put out a bet. Obviously, I think that if he had a jack of some sort, he might put out a smaller bet, being as that it's a backdoor diamond draw. So I'm just trying to target a weaker jack or maybe like pocket eights or something along the sorts. So I just decided to put out a bet of $50. Sometimes I could go larger, but I do put out a bet of 50. And I see the worst news. He decides to raise it up to $175. Like I said, this player has been rather passive. Now, I haven't played with him long enough to know his full game, but when he raises here, it just doesn't make sense. So you could say that I could beat a lot of his backdoor flush draws. I can beat a straight. However, I believe that if he backdoored a flush draw, I think he would just bet it himself, not check, because more than likely I would check back. Now, it's quite possible that he's not thinking about it to that sort. So, for hands that I beat, I know he's not bluffing here. So, the hands that we beat are smaller flush draws, straights, and if somehow he maybe has trips, but I still think that's unlikely. So, that's what we beat. We do lose to pocket sixes, pocket threes would now be quads. We lose to pocket deuces, which would have been a flop set. So there are quite a few hands that we do lose to. He could have deuce 3. He could maybe play it out the big blind. I'm not sure. But I always heard of a thing where it says that turn raises are almost always the nuts and river raises are always the nuts. So as a live exploit, I let go of my nut flush. I fold. I ask the guy, can you please give me a review? He says that he can't, or rather he won't. And so we never get to see what he had. I'll never know if it's a good fold. But I do welcome everybody. If you want to flame me up in the comments, go for it. Or if you think that maybe exploitative, this was a good fold. Nonetheless, let me know what you think. That is the last hand. We're going to go to the outro to discuss the results for the whole video. So stay tuned because I have some news that I want to share with you all. All right, well, that was that final hand there. I know it was a crazy hand. I don't know if y'all blame me for making that fold. Just let me know. It is what it is. I just thought that I'm not good there that often. I could have been. The thing is about poker is if you want to make big folds, really good folds, a lot of times you're never going to see the result. So you're just going to have to go with your gut. You know, I know everyone's used to seeing live streams where you get to go back and look at what somebody has. But in real life poker, when you make big folds, you don't see it. You just got to hope that it was the right decision. Y'all let me know if it was or wasn't. But let's get to the results. We played, I think between both sessions, we played about 5 hours total. So only about 2.5 hours per session. It's not that long. But, you know, when I play during the day, I have other things to do. So I got there 5 hours. And in the first half, we lost a 225 that I said. And in the second one, even after that loss at the very end, we still won $250 after that loss. So total win was only $25. A win is a win. Maybe if I make that call, I'm up a lot more. But Also, I could be down a lot more. So we don't know. Like I said, you never know in poker sometimes. But definitely appreciate y'all for watching the Bankroll Challenge. I'm going to give an update in another video or two. Since I'm playing 1-3, the results aren't that fast. So every couple videos, I'll do an update. But just want to say I appreciate y'all for continued support, for seeing me at MGM, saying that you watch my videos, telling me to keep on grinding. I appreciate y'all. So until the next video, holla.